podcast, a global conversation hosted by Alex Resvan Viennet.
Okay, hello and welcome to the Retail Podcast. Today is a very special episode. Number one, because we're experimenting with video. As you can see, you've got Cate and myself. And Cate, unfortunately, cannot see me, so I can see Cate. So it's a little bit odd for her, to be fair. We're completely putting a stress testing her. But I've had the great fortune of knowing Cate for roughly about 5 years. I did stalk her originally as a fanboy. I remember running up to her at Shop Talk and asking to just spend some time with her. Cate is top 20 global retail influencer on LinkedIn. Retail Trends, her company that she, Insider Trends that she set up has a whole plethora of services, including safaris and deep analysis. And I think the best thing is to let Cate sort of give us an overview of what Insider Trends does and what she does as head of Insider Trends. But I just have to give some context. When I met Cate 5 years ago, and I was asking her about the future of retail, as I do with most people that I meet, I love getting people's opinions. But I'll be brutally honest, there have been only two people, and Cate is one of them, that have not necessarily made predictions, but have observed and recommended and subtly said, hey, look at, for example, I'll give the two examples that just blew me away. Look at Vagabond Wines and what's going on there. Look at Vita Mojo and what's Vita Mojo doing. And Vita Mojo, if you don't know, are now an online software provider for restaurants. But 5 years ago, they were the equivalent of Pret a Manger. And then Cate obviously came in and has spoken with different customers of ours or mine back in the day when I was in my previous role. But there are very few people that I think can do what Cate does. And so with that, I am eternally grateful to you, Cate, for giving up your time and joining me on the podcast. Maybe for those who don't know you and aren't fanboys, if you could just sort of give an overview of what's head of trends at Insider Trends like, and what's Insider Trends all about.
Yeah, I describe myself as the head of trends. And we're quite a small business, so that everything we do is about retail. So we do everything from research reports to retail safaris that you mentioned, presentations, innovation programs, consultancy, and now execution as well. We've partnered up with some companies that can build solutions for our clients. So it's full end-to-end. And we've been lucky enough to work with brands like Chanel and Lego, Galeries Lafayette, Unilever, some A-list brand, the written brands. Well, I spend a lot of my time researching, pulling out the insights from other people's research as well, and collating it into a form that is useful to our clients. So there's so much information out there, but I think the real value that we provide is we give clients the exact insights that they need and the examples of best practice that they need to see from around the world. So we take this massive information and we turn it into something specifically useful for our clients.
I have to ask, and in terms of COVID, how that's impacted, and I guess on you and from what you've seen, if we break this up into two parts, if we talk about, if you like, the impact, what you see the impact, and I guess the term new normal, everyone's used to that term, but I mean, just tell me what you've seen from the impact, because I did watch a video of yours that you sort of said, 2008. So maybe if you want to unpack that for the people who've not watched your video.
Sure. Yeah, so it is interesting comparing what's happening now with what happened in 2008. We went back, we saw how much retail sales dropped in America in 2008. And I think it was November 2008, they dropped by 4%. And by that point, retail sales records had been running for 30 years.
Wow.
That monthly drop was the biggest drop on record. But we can compare that 4% drop to what happened in March 2020.
Yeah.
March this year, they fell by more than 8%.
Wow.
So more than twice. And then in April, they fell by more than 16%.
Right. Got you.
So what is happening now is, the crisis now puts 2008 in the shade, really. We're dealing with something much, much bigger. I'm sure we know it from working in our businesses, but it's quite nice to have the numbers to know that we're not all mad, I guess.
What's your thoughts on, before we sort of get into, again, the unpacking what the impact on retailers will be going forward, but how do you see, or was there any numbers around consumers and the impact on consumers?
Well, we know that in China, when lockdown lifted, retail sales went back to about 80% of their pre-COVID levels.
Got you.
It's kind of okay, but also the question is, can your store pay for itself if it's only making 80% of the sales that it was before COVID?
Yeah.
But the bigger question is, what is the role of the physical store going forward?
Yeah.
If everyone said before this happened, the store won't go away because everyone wants to touch and feel and spend time in the store and have that experience.
Yeah.
If, while we're living with COVID, like, touch is the exact thing we shouldn't be doing,
Yeah.
then how does that leave the physical retail experience?
Oh, there's the echo.
And if stores can't have as many people in them, so if you want to go back to the same level of football, you have to get people through faster, but then that's impacting the dwell time. There's some difficult maths to be done as well, I think. So, yeah, we do need to think of a new possibilities for the retail store, I think.
Sure. I mean, one of the interesting things is the breaking down the personas, right? And these missions in the old world of, the missions that people are on, and what new missions will people be on? And then how does that impact in terms of, if people are on similar missions, what are the new personas that are going to have? And I remember, again, this is one of your themes, the fast and slow, when people would go in. I listened and I took notes all those years ago. But that sort of, when people go in to browse, I mean, going into a supermarket for me, where I live, has been really tough. It's just, left me not wanting to go in. And so therefore, I totally understand the rise in digital commerce, which was inevitable, I would say, and this has accelerated it. But I do still see this disconnect between digital and physical, and how obviously when retailers open back up, and there's been a lot of talk about live streaming and how people are live streaming. I remember you met Hero and you were on the same stage as Hero. I spoke to them. Hero are a live streaming company. They are having a great time right now because people want to stream from their stores. Do you see, I guess, as we move into the sort of trying to look at the impacts or the new normal, do you see these types of digital ways of doing things through lockdown maturing and becoming platforms?
I think this is actually the time for digital, for digital to offer a much better experience. This is something we were really quite excited by before COVID, but now the time is ripe to explore these ideas. So, before all of this hit, we saw that e-commerce was doing fairly well, was growing at one of the fastest growth rates in retail. But of course, since COVID, it's exploded. But if we can add an experience into that, it will do even better again. So the amazing growth rates that we've seen in digital have still come from quite a boring, dry, catalogue-based experience. But if we can, there are numerous ways we can build experience into the digital experience. So live streaming is one of them. Bringing in things like augmented reality is another. We've seen some sites offer social media style functionality or crowdfunding style functionality. So they're telling stories around the producers of the products that they're selling.
Yeah.
So there are ways to build more experience into the digital.
Yeah.
And why I say I think this will do better, again, I think one of the key metrics that we found was that L'Oreal have been working with Amazon. They put a virtual augmented reality lipstick try-on into the Amazon interface.
Yeah.
And they said that when customers experiment with lipstick through that, they spend twice as long messing around with the system, and they convert 3 times more. The conversion rate goes up 3 times, by 3 times.
Right.
And so if you think in just 1 month, e-com sales in America have gone up by 50%, and then we add AI to that and triple the conversion rate, then you actually get something viable, I think, for businesses.
Do you see this sort of payments and checkout playing a part in this new world?
Yeah, well, I think the simpler we can make payments, the more people will buy.
Yeah.
And there are ways of making it fairly straightforward now. I think I bought some cinema tickets on my phone with Odeon before all this happened, and it was just linked with my Apple Pay, and I just paid with my thumb in a couple of clicks, and it was phenomenally simple. I was looking at that thinking, why aren't retailers or more retailers using what? So I think that's possibly the better we can make the user experience, the more people are going to buy. Also, we've seen, I think this is also a time for the payment by installment companies. I think it was Afterpay who said that when their solution is offered at checkout, customers tend to pay 55% more. Their basket size is 55% bigger.
Okay.
So not always the right thing to offer every customer, or for every business to offer it. But that is another way of encouraging customers to spend more.
Yeah, I remember having this whole conversation with a head of innovation a while back, 2 years ago, and it's one of these grocers, and we would, and my feedback was, if you want to do something different, you have to think about how people check out, and this new world, you can't check out and I remember actually Zara reformatted their stores to allow people to check out in a different light, and this new touchless society, because now everyone wants to create these touchless experiences. Checkout becomes this thing, right? Do you still force people to 2-meter queue distance if they're going to buy something?
And I think of self-scanning as being quite a slow, clunky experience.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes now is it was from Barry at JD Sports last week. He said, someone in their business said, "Hey, look, change the customer experience for 6 weeks, change it for life." And so therefore the fact that we've all been in lockdown, having these different experiences, it does feel that, for me, checkout, the positioning of, and this sort of old world, how merchandisers would think of checkout and where tills need to be, just has to change. It can't exist in this social distancing world. So I don't know. We'll see. And obviously, the whole hygiene standards is another thing, but that's for someone else to talk about.
Yeah, but that's something else. I mean, I was saying for years, I've been saying, why does the queue exist?
Yeah.
We have ways to get rid of the queue. Why aren't we doing this? So maybe it's time.
What do you see from the research that you're doing? What will be some of these new norms? What will be some of these themes that will sort of bleed into into the new experiences?
Well, I think one of the best bits of good news is that there are some surveys that are saying that the way customers are shopping now are going to be the way that they'll keep shopping. So KPMG did a survey where they found that only 16% of customers say they're going to go back to shopping in the exact same way that they did before the crisis.
Right.
I was quite surprised to hear this, but apparently 47% say that they're going to keep on shopping in the exact same way that they're shopping now.
Right.
So that, I think, is great news in that retailers don't need to be afraid of investing in giving customers new ways of buying or interacting with them. Because if they invest in that now, customers will start using it and they'll keep using it for the long term. I think customers have been forced to change some of their behaviours, and now they can see the upside of buying in these new ways. They're going to stick with it.
So, Cate, one of the things I know Insider Trends does a lot of prior to lockdown were safaris. And obviously you must be researching for whenever lockdown opens up and the what the new normal, who would be, if you were going to do a safari for new normal and you were going to take people on these journeys. Has any of your research sort of taken you to any, for whenever it opens up, are there any sort of retailers that come to mind on this sort of, if you were going to do these safaris?
I think it's been difficult we've been reading a lot. Normally we confirm that a store should be on a safari by visiting it in person, which, being based in Britain, is still not wise to leave the house still, sadly. No. But I think one of the businesses that has done the best marketing COVID is Target, actually. They've got some phenomenal numbers behind what they've been doing. So their share price is almost back to what it was before coronavirus hit. And they found that loads of customers are now buying online and picking up in the store. So actually the fact that they have stores has been one of their greatest strengths, even if customers are just pulling up outside to pick up their order. And the beauty of this system is not only does it offer a better experience to the customer, most often a same-day pickup experience, so that better experience brings in more sales. But whenever they involve the store in fulfilling an order, the cost of fulfillment dropped to about 10% of the cost of fulfilling something from a warehouse.
Right.
So it's brilliant. And they've also found that once a customer tries what they call curbside pickup, 3/4 of them will try it again within the next 3 months. So actually, this is maybe not the most innovative, but it is working brilliantly. They're finding that this omni-channel system is meaning that they can fulfill online orders really affordably, and it's giving them a new direction going forward.
Got you.
So I think that's really clever. Yeah, they're one of the biggest winners.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't. The day job gets in the way, so I can't talk about Target. Okay, no, I agree. They're absolutely, I think, for a long time have been the darlings of the industry, specifically in the US, because they have understood that the store is there to fulfill in whichever channel, from whether it's BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store, click and collect, whatever it is, the store is there to facilitate that. And I think it's something that Amazon has been enviously looking at on how they can replicate this. Do you see? I mean, I've had different experiences with Amazon and I different frustrations. How do you see Amazon coming out of this?
Just better.
Okay.
The bigger getting bigger.
Yeah.
There are many, I'm sure you've seen all the headlines that many businesses can't afford to not sell anything for 2 or 3 months, that they'll go out of business.
Yeah.
I don't know quite how many billions of dollars Amazon have in cash today, but they can go years without selling anything if they need to.
Yeah.
So sadly, if a whole bunch of other companies go out of business, they'll probably do better.
No, I got you.
And when I think it's still 40-50% of e-commerce sales solely go to them.
Yeah.
So a lot of this growth in e-commerce is going straight.
I did have this And I could when I was in the US at NRF, I did had this weird experience where I don't know if people remember the Littlewoods catalog or the Argos catalog of old. And obviously it still exists, but the fact that Amazon was just so overpopulated with it was a simple thing I was looking for, but then I just found myself losing so much time getting to that thing that I wanted after the adverts, after the thing. And that's when I was thinking, okay, I get it. Well, in limited markets, it's really punchy and it's there and you're getting products and the algorithms are picking up. But I did see them struggling, just like catalog companies used to, with so much choice that the fact that it just, it was like, okay, this is, half an hour, 45 minutes of scrolling for the right product became friction full for me. Again, that's anecdotal. So not for 1 minute using my experience of Amazon being the future of Amazon, but I just did see this sort of inflection point where if they have so much choice, it almost becomes Aldi or Lidl and decision fatigue versus the big grocers and how Aldi and Lidl are winning, right? So online, it's like this whole, and it's sort of my tenuous link to D2C comes in here, right? In terms of the rise of D2C through this period. And do you think that form of, cutting out the middleman and going direct to consumers in a physical world will continue?
Yeah, I think so, because it's brand building. So that's, you build your brand offline, you get customers to immerse themselves in it, and then you can sell online.
Yeah.
So the question is, again, how do you do that in a no-touch way? How do you get customers to spend time with you when they don't want to hang around in the store necessarily?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you can offer that in-person experience, then that's going to make it much easier for you to sell to them online.
Yeah.
I've always thought that DTC is the best way forward because brands can control every aspect of the experience.
Yeah.
Including how the staff respond, and they can get all the data from everything that's happening in the store that they often can't else in a third-party store. There's loads of benefits in running their own.
I got you.
Well, I think the whole reviews thing is really helpful because when you were saying, like, you think Amazon has its drawbacks, I think shopping in the real world still has a lot of drawbacks because there have been numerous times when I've been in shops looking at the product and I think, where are the reviews for this?
Yeah, God, yeah. Yes.
Whether people think this is good or not. And before I know it, I'm on my phone, like on other websites that
yes.
pushes me onto my phone. Whereas if it was all in front of me, that would be, I would have the information that I needed. And the other thing is, we were on Amazon the other day looking at a kettle.
Okay.
We watched the video about the kettle.
Yeah.
And you still can't get that experience in the store. And personally, I would say that what we learned from the video was better than the information we get from your typical salesperson in the store.
Yeah. No. And the Amazon 5-star stores are a great example of, and to be fair to Waterstones, I remember going into Waterstones, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, and you had book recommendations scribbled by the people in the store on their top 10 of here's what our associates or workers think about these books. And I remember thinking, wow, isn't that brilliant? Because I'm not in a book club or anything, but it was just wonderful to save time to, if I'm looking for a business book and then someone's written their top business book, which then Amazon 5-star takes to a whole different level because every single product, in their stores, they do have that review. But having discussed feedback loops with retailers, I just think, having a feedback loop per product is very tough and challenging and difficult for them. So,
right, yeah. I don't know if they're allowed to pull reviews from Amazon, like just the overall recommendation.
Yeah.
The score from Amazon might be one way. also, I will say that I listened to your comments about decision fatigue, but I still find it amazing that I can go onto Google or Amazon and look for a product and never find it.
Yeah.
Never find the thing I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I think we all think that the internet has so much.
Yes.
But actually, I was looking for bomber jackets at
Right.
some point, or every now and then I go on and I
Very
look,
cool. Yeah.
and it's almost impossible
Yeah.
to find what you're looking for. So this, I mean, that's a big challenge for online to deal with.
Yeah.
Is still to bring people what they're actually looking for.
And this is and I think you bring up a great point of what a shame it is that retailers, physical retail, can't tap into or hasn't been able to tap into that because people go into the store, and I know people have fiddled around or messed around with having an app-led experience through the store.
So is the experience you're talking about like seeing what's in the store before you go?
No, when you're in the store, seeing what's there. So obviously, stores and retailers have become savvy to having, some form of tablet device with stock information, but it just becomes so wishy-washy. It's not a statement of fact or truth that they will have that item that you're looking for in your size, and so therefore. And the most important thing is other people's experiences with whatever that thing is that you're looking for, and how we've become so used to this Uber rated. It used to be eBay rated. You would look at the seller; they were the sort of the leaders in that. But I have seen people experiment with it. But it's just the 5-star store is the only example I can think of a retailer using feedback constructively to help. And I know I've just mixed two themes in terms of look up for product and then feedback on things, but ultimately, from my perspective, they're technology inflection points.
Yeah, and I think what another thing that we've identified for the crisis that I think will grow much faster now is the use of a service called Near Street.
Okay. Yeah.
You have, yeah. So,
but the listeners or the watchers may not have. So let's take us through them.
Sure. So they have a really simple system of helping retailers keep track of what's in stock in their stores.
Yep.
And they've now partnered with Google, so you can search for an item near you, and if a local store is using Near Street, you can actually see live stock levels near you, and that's brilliant. Well, it gets around a couple of issues. It means that as a customer, you don't have a wasted journey.
Yeah.
But even more relevant, now we're worried about getting coronavirus whenever we leave the house. If you're going to leave the house to pick up an item, you want to know it's there.
Yeah.
So we've been waiting for Near Street to take over the world for a long time now.
Yeah.
So this is their time. And we may see a lot more local shopping too, because we may be going back to a world that relies more on cars and bikes than it does public transport.
Oh my God, the increase in bicycles and electric vehicles. I love it. I bought my electric bike just before lockdown, luckily. But now the whole fact that unlocks, especially because I'm not a cyclist, 12 miles is now doable for me. 6 miles is doable for me. Whereas before, I always struggle with 6 or 12 miles. But now, thanks to sort of electric bikes, which apparently are another one of these sort of categories that have had a really good, good and COVID in the same sentence. But anyway, I definitely see if the pedestrianisation of the town centre continues, it could only be, and I'm hoping the planning commissioners and town hall policymakers just tap into that to close off more roads. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there could be a much bigger focus on neighbourhoods. I think Melbourne actually has is now rethinking its neighbourhood plan with COVID in mind. They've realised that people want more local green space to spend time in, and there is more of a need for a local set of shops.
Yeah.
So, and also, well, we know that Dollar General has been another winner in America, partly because they have these neighbourhood stores.
Yeah.
They're all very accessible for people to go to. So yeah, the question is, what are the malls going to do? Given that most malls that have been built in the last 10, 15 years have mainly been built on some public transport. Are people going to go to those in the same way that they might before?
Yeah, and especially if it's got to be, if the social distancing rules are going to stay in place, you can just imagine if the queues getting into IKEA are bad, the queues getting into your local shopping centre are going to be horrendous. And what is that? So it feels like they need to do a rethink on how people are going to interact with these spaces. So, Cate, two of the sort of in conclusion questions as we sort of come to the top of our time together. One was the period, how long you see this going on for. Is it all going to get better when there's a vaccine or not? I mean, I have an opinion on that. And then from a retailer's perspective, what do you see with the retailers in this and I keep saying as lockdown because currently it is June 5th. So, we're still in semi-lockdown. But yeah, so tell me about the timeline and then give me your thoughts on what you think about how retailers and what the examples, what examples you're seeing from your research.
Sure. The question about when this ends is interesting because most people seem to think that this only properly ends when there's a vaccine. But we read some interesting things from the New York Times, who went off and talked to scientists rather than politicians, and they said that actually the record to go from zero to vaccine is 4 years.
Right.
They said that, they talked to a scientist who said that really only 10% of vaccines that go into trials ever get approved.
Okay.
And they said under a normal timeline, if we started looking for a vaccine now, we'd probably get one in our hands in 2036.
Wow.
So reading that, it seemed quite different.
Sobering.
The timeline we've been given by politicians saying it's 9 to 18 months away. I think we need to really think that we're in this now and we have to make the best of the situation we're in rather than holding tight, waiting for a vaccine. I don't think that's really the best idea. And then also I read something else, an interview with the director of the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, I believe. Yeah. She said that a second wave of coronavirus is a case of when.
Yes.
Rather than if.
Agreed. I do actually agree with that.
Yeah. So it's difficult. I think we need to come up with other ways to address what's happening rather than waiting for it to go away. What do you think? What's your opinion on that?
Well, it's the whole stress test during the 2008. Banks had to be able to be stress tested after the financial crisis to see how well they can deal with them. But we still, bar the number of people in hospitals, that's really the only stress test that they're doing. Do we have enough facilities to deal with people rather than thinking about it in all the other ways? When we look at Singapore or the countries that have handled this really well, it's not necessarily does your medical facility can they cope with it? It's can you track and trace? Can you do you have the correct measures to reduce the spread? So if we're going to live with it, how do we coexist as opposed to lockdown? Because there was no plan for coexistence with a virus or a pandemic. It's and that's because in the 1918, whenever the Spanish flu was, that was the only tools that they had, and that was for me apart from the loss of life, which has been again really, and really difficult, because anyway, it's been really difficult. It's the fact that people haven't thought about this in a coexistence way. It's like we're either going to dominate it, we're all going to get a vaccine, and that's it. It's going to cure, and we're going to go back, as opposed to what does this coexistence life look like without, and that's it. So that's my opinion. There has to be this way that, and it is stuff like masks, gloves, personal hygiene, beyond just washing hands. And unfortunately, when you look at Europe and you compare this to the UK, you just see, as you said, politics of. I guess most citizens would say their governments have got it wrong. So that's cool. I say that. But the examples of people getting it right, if we can all agree they've got it wrong, but where are the examples of people getting it right? And I think we've just not taken enough of those.
Right.
So it's not the vaccine. I'm 100% agree with you. The bounce back will happen because people will get this false sense of security, as opposed to looking at how does coexistence happen?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
And I think actually after this I may go off and run some numbers. I think you can probably work out how many people are going to your store. I think store capacities will be at something like 60% of their previous.
That's it. Yep.
So there are you can run some numbers to work out how much you need to be selling to each person in order to make your previous revenues back. And yeah, you can almost design correct ecosystem through the numbers.
I have spoken to a lot of retailers that are preparing their staff for the new normal, but that almost is still working on a 60, as you were saying, it's a reduced number of people in store, and how do we manage that, as opposed to how do we live with it, as in, what are the measures we can take?
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I just really find it hard to imagine having a delightful, exciting, discovery-based shopping experience if I'm wearing a mask and gloves.
No, I got you.
I think retail has to do something different. I think it's going to move towards being a more functional space, perhaps, than this space that customers will actually want to spend time in.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting when you look at some of the European countries, for example, opening up bars and the outside world. How does the outside play a part? And retail, unfortunately, is an inside activity. And so therefore, digital has to be the answer again. Mm. And that's why we come back to streaming, we come back to the technologies that I think it used to be called showrooming in the old days, where, you would demonstrate products from your store or from wherever, and then people would look at it, like the good old days of QVC. It's not good old days; they still are going, right? But QVC for the new generation, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And how does digital play a part in that? How does and again, this is where you see people still falling short, because they're not necessarily looking for digital and physical combined experiences. So I mean, I totally get you, but about the glove, and is it a great experience if you've got gloves and masks on? Are you going to be feeling your best? If I was to challenge that for a moment, in Asia, they have got used. That was we all remember seeing the video footage of people just browsing and going into the high street with it just becomes a new normal. And so therefore then you have to think, okay, if that's a limitation like accessibility is, it becomes an accessibility problem. With limited accessibility, how do I provide delightful experiences? And tech plays a part in it for me.
Yeah.
Tech can be a component that opens that up. It's something that I've had to spend a lot of time thinking about in creating the vision of what stores look like.
Yeah.
And
I think it's about offering as much of an exciting, engaging experience online as you can.
Yeah.
And then using the store for the fulfillment side.
Yeah.
And the other beauty of omnichannel is that it's flexible. I think the omnichannel brands are actually the ones who've seen their online sales grow the most during all of this.
Yeah.
But also, it's the most future-proof system. Because as we've discussed, we don't know, no one knows for sure what's going to happen next. But if you've got this really flexible system, if we all go back into lockdown, we can, to the online ordering system, everyone is suddenly really confident and happy to leave the house and they can rely on the store. It makes so much sense. But yeah, I think it's time for businesses to build more experience through digital, to move away from experience.
Yeah, and it's a shame a little bit in terms of the grocers through this period have had peak trading. For them, it's been Christmas for the last 3 months or 4 months. And some of the things and tools that they use in supply chain, you would almost want to empower the consumer or user with, because one of the problems that we saw with people fighting over loo roll at the beginning of this was the fact that there was no planning tools. So people didn't really know how much things that they needed. So imagine if retailers, or specifically in grocery, they furnished you with that. They furnish you with the tools to allow you to plan a month worth of shop. So because fear kicks in, right? People were buying out of fear. And so I agree about digital, but it's also digital tools. And currently they don't exist. There is no digital tool to help people to plan. And hence...
My friend shared a toilet paper planner with me. So
was it a physical thing or a digital tool?
It's just a little online calculator. You type in how many people are in your household.
Fantastic.
How many sheets you use a day, and it calculates it all for you. So those things can be built quite quickly. I'm also thinking about, I think it was Jamie Oliver.
Right.
Years ago, this was like 2012 or something. Jamie Oliver partnered up with Ocado, I think.
Okay.
And you could look at his recipes.
Yeah.
And press one button, add all of this to my basket.
Yeah.
So that was a form of planning. You could go through and add all the meals you wanted to have ingredients for in your Ocado basket. But there's lots of fantastic ideas we've seen that haven't really taken off, sadly.
No, and I think this is the new lens that people need. And I think if you think about how fear has driven so much of what's happened, rather than information and fact. And in my mind, so going back to the digital, how you make, digital based decisions. Well, what does that look like? And yeah, no, I just think that these tools are lacking. And in the old world, you're absolutely right. Most of these things have existed. I remember, add this shopping list, but then it became a closed ecosystem. And that's the other thing. Would be great if there was more sharing of data, as in more sharing of things that help the greater good of society. I mean, people coming together, for example, for building scrubs for the NHS workers. And that was totally circular economy led. And we've not discussed this in terms of the circular economy and what you think that's in the environmental factors. But they're also sort of themes that, I don't know, do you have I'm conscious of time. How much time you got?
I've got, I think, a few interesting things to say.
Go on.
I'm enjoying having a chat to you.
Go on. Okay. So tell me what you think about that.
About the circular economy.
Yeah, because I heard that people are less worried about the environment, although they love the fact that they're now seeing birds, that they're, bird watching has gone through the roof, but it's not a factor for them right now. But I mean, what tell me what you think.
Okay, so I think everyone means very well, but I think I'm feeling a little bit cynical about sustainability.
Okay.
I think circular economy stuff is fantastic, but there's a hard business decision to make behind that, because if you think that you can rent things to consumers or take them back at the end of their life, you end up only needing to make about 10% of what you were making before.
Right.
That's why the circular economy is exciting from a sustainability point of view.
Yeah.
But actually presents businesses with very difficult decisions.
Yeah.
So I think H&M were talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's great that it's interesting to them, but if they wholeheartedly embrace that, they will need to engage 10 times as many customers in order to maintain their turnover at the same levels.
Yeah.
So there's just, I don't know, there's just some hard decisions and discussions to make, I think.
Yeah.
And also I think, I saw a headline that said something like our reduction in consumption or our reduction in travel is a drop in the ocean compared to all the electricity we're consuming. I need to look this up properly, but actually there were scientists saying it feels like we're consuming a lot less, but actually we're not.
Yeah.
And my third point is that I believe when people feel worried about their finances and their own personal security,
Yeah.
they put themselves before anything else.
Of course.
So, yeah, they'll be going to fast fashion rather than thinking that they'll buy less, I think.
Yeah.
So, I think, yeah, everyone's intentions are admirable, but I don't think we're entering a new world of sustainability.
I agree. I actually do agree with you.
The level of sustainable change that we need,
yes,
I think is the key thing.
Yeah. No, I agree in terms of people are, they're inwardly facing or have to have been. And so therefore these it becomes competing priorities, they sort of coming down. And the other thing that you've made me think about is this 60% of capacity. Then, that's 60% of your revenue. How are you going to make up the shortfall? But and if digital is going to continue to increase, it just becomes like, if we were going to hypothesize about this, well, what does that all, what does it look like? And I guess I'm putting, from your perspective, you feel that digital, we will just become more digital consumer. We will continue to grow as digital consumers.
I think we need to. I think it's the biggest answer I can find at the moment, anyway. And I think it's interesting that you were talking about fear versus information. We found it quite a logical way of making decisions, but we actually have to remember that almost 99% of everything we buy is driven by emotion.
Yeah.
And I think that is what the retail industry needs to back at this point. So the digital experiences we're used to are very dry.
Yeah.
I feel like physical retail, basically in the West, if we're not used to going out in a mask and gloves, certainly for a while, that physical retail experience is going to feel very logical and functional as well. But what we can do is bring the emotional experience back into digital.
Yeah.
So the live streaming that you've been talking about, or running your own version of QC online.
Yeah.
That, I think, is, one of the ways forward, actually.
Yeah.
I think another one that we've cited as an example of best practice is naked wines.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you spent much time?
No. Tell me. I've seen the literature that comes through.
Yes. They're fascinating. They so on the face of it, that is a catalogue style e-commerce site for wine.
Right.
But there's all sorts of social features built into that. So as you start to buy different wines, they will not only recommend wine that you'll like, but tell you the stories of the winemakers who are making that. So there's an element of a magazine in with that. Then there's a whole social networking aspect to it where, you can join groups talking about styles of wine that you like, or set up your own groups. And I think some of them are doing Zoom meetups as well.
Okay.
So something you meet up with strangers, I think. to discuss the wine that you like. And then there's also a crowdfunding side to it.
Right.
So independent winemakers can list their projects, and you can invest in that, and then you can chat with the winemakers. They sometimes, when they're allowed to, they run in-person outings to their vineyards.
Right.
And it's fantastic. So if we do go back into lockdown again, there'll be enough experience in that to educate people and excite them about wine. But we are allowed to leave the house, or when we're allowed to leave the house, we can go on these in-person meetups to the vineyards. It's the best of both.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you talk, it sort of made me remember or think about Avon, and how home experiences are just as important. And I've not seen an increase. Sorry, I've not seen it again. My global view, but I've not seen people tapping into that.
Yeah, well,
or have you? I mean, I've not seen it. Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, that was something else that quite interesting that happened in the past few weeks. I interviewed the head of marketplace,
right?
Alfred.
Okay.
And actually, I was preparing for the interview, going, "Oh, why have we set this interview up?" I wasn't quite sure because they're basically a set of modern paints and butlers,
right?
So someone comes to your house once a week, and you get to know them by name. And they will run all sorts of errands for you, almost anything you ask them to do. So they'll pick up your laundry or bring you flowers. They can do a quick tidy round of your home, just things that a butler would do for you 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, they make their money in 3 ways. They sell the time of the Alfreds to you.
Yep.
If they do some shopping for you, that can be your grocery shopping or high-end fashion, whatever you want, they add a small margin to everything they buy for you. But the third one is that they sell sponsorships to brands. They basically realised that they offer a whole new marketing channel, or they can replace all the functions of retail, both in terms of marketing and selling.
Yeah.
So they were working with, one of their brands was Unilever.
So Alfred, if we could just take a step back. So Alfred, they live in the digital world, right? As in that's your journey, the path to purchase with Alfred is it's a digital thing that ends up in a physical experience, or not?
So they, I think your main point of contact with them when you're not in front of them is an app.
Right.
And that app is used to book all the services you want. They run a grocery shopping list through that too. So that's the retail part of it. There is a physical part because actually they work with a lot of buildings.
Yeah.
So these luxury buildings are finding that it's fantastic USP and a difference to say when you rent an apartment, you get use of an Alfred for free.
Got you.
Or the basic service for free. So actually, for many customers, their first point of call is not digital; it's actually physical.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay.
Almost what I love about Alfred is that it's retail that is just wrapped around the consumer. It just happens in the customer's space.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel digital or physical. It's I think where a customer may think of their interaction with the Hello Alfred brand.
Yeah.
And so should I tell you about the Unilever?
Yeah, that's what I was just about. Yeah, please.
Sure. So so Unilever pay Hello Alfred to introduce their customers to new products and to have intelligent discussions with them about it. So Unilever essentially paying Hello Alfred for a similar service to what they get in the supermarket for this exposure to customers. And then when the customer's convinced that this new product is the best thing ever, they can actually buy it through the Hello Alfred app. And so that's actually doing everything that a retail store or website was doing.
Got you.
is this, a third space for retail, and I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that the whole the cons. I mean, Unilever has been brilliant from a marketing perspective for their brands, but as you said, this third space that's been created and how people are going to tap into that. It's. I mean, I presume it's going really well for them. Or
Yeah, and they've been another winner during COVID.
got you.
So yeah, it spurred them on. I think there were things on their roadmap that they rushed out because of COVID. They've launched a much more basic grocery pickup service.
Yeah.
So it's much more affordable, but it means that they're in front of way more customers than they were before.
Understood. How do you see? I mean, I guess in summary, because you and I can talk a lot longer, because I have so many other questions that I want to ask you in terms of this whole. You mentioned third space, and I love that thinking, because that's, for me, that's.
Maybe it's a fourth space.
That's what I was. I was going to challenge you and say, okay, if we were going to break it down into these environments. And I guess going back to my original comment about the home and how home experiences, is that the solution? Is ASOS going to come up with a home experience above and beyond just sending you, the stuff that you've ordered off the website?
Yeah.
And I know, there's been plenty of examples of gift boxes like Chapper, and I forget the ones in the US, but there's been quite a few different. We'll send you a box of stuff to delight you, but I was just wondering, have you seen any others or any sort of people moving in? Because I used to say the home was the battlefront of the future for retail. If I can build a relationship with you at home, then I've, like Amazon, like the brands have done, then I've got you for life.
Yeah.
Alfred seems to have done that.
Yeah, I haven't come across any other brands doing anything amazing, to be honest.
Okay.
In that space. But yeah, I think for high-end brands, that's a possibility, because obviously there's quite a lot of cost associated with it. But yeah, it could be a real point of difference for the brands with a price point where it makes sense to do so.
Okay. So in summary, Cate, if I'm watching this and I'm a retailer, what would be the 3 things you think I would need to focus on? And again, I've got 3 parts, but I'm going to keep it simple in terms of just give me the 3 things because I was going to put it into time frames, right? We know that there's going to be a new normal. We know that that's going to go on, and then we know that the potentially has to really be a normal after that, because we're in this sort of middle ground of people coming back to the outside world and going back into retail. But what would you say would be the 3 areas I would need to consider?
Sure. So I would say I actually see it as 2 big things, really.
Okay. All right.
You use digital to start and maintain the relationship. You put as much experience into digital as you possibly can, which might involve just using social media to ask customers what they want.
Right.
And talk to them in a way that we don't see many brands doing, actually. Or hosting Zoom parties, or hosting one-to-one personal shopping sessions, maybe having augmented reality try-ons. But there's so much more that can be done through digital.
Yeah.
So experience through digital is the starting point. I think fleshing out your omni-channel ecosystem. So thinking in an omni-channel way, starting the relationship with digital and fulfilling through the physical. I think that's the key point.
Yeah.
And not being afraid to get started. What we learned from that KPMG survey was that what we're thinking of as these new behaviours, we're not going back from here. A lot of these new behaviours are going to stick.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to invest.
Okay.
Dream up a new way of interacting and go forth boldly.
That's wonderful. Cate, thank you so much again for your time. Time has literally flown by. We've been doing this, I think, an hour hour and a bit. So thank you. I really do appreciate it.
They're really nice. Thank you.
Thanks.
The Retail Podcast, a global conversation hosted by Alex Resvan, the